வணக்கம். வரும் 22ஆம் தேதி உள்ளூர் தேர்தலும் யூரோப்பியன் தேர்தலும் நடைபெற உள்ளது. இதை தொடர்பாக இந்த எலெக்ஷனில் நிற்கும் கேண்டிடேட்ஸை நாங்கள் இன்டர்வியூ பண்ண இருக்கிறோம். முதலில் வால்தம்ஸில் நிற்கும் நான்சி டாஃபை நாங்கள் இன்டர்வியூ பண்ண போகிறோம். நான்சி டாஃப் வந்து வால்தம்ஸில் நிற்கிறா. வால்தம்ஸில் நிறைய தமிழ் மக்கள் இருக்கிறார். நான்சி டாஃப் எலெக்ட் ஆனால் தமிழ் மக்களுக்கு என்ன செய்ய போகிறான்னு கேட்போம். Hi Nancy.
Hi Isa.
Okay, thank you for taking part in this and for giving us your time.
That's okay.
So, to just begin, could you just introduce about yourself and how you and why you're standing in the elections?
Okay, so I am Nancy Taaffe. I'm an activist, a socialist and a trade unionist, and I'm one of 33 people who are standing in this election, in this local government election. I lost my job in the cuts. I worked in libraries, and we're standing to reject the idea that cuts should take place, that there are hundreds of people losing their jobs all the time, many of them in the Tamil community, just as in every community, and yet there is no political formation apart from ourselves who is saying reject all the cuts and stand together in a united campaign. So we're in an electoral platform on May the 22nd, and that's primarily what we're putting forward.
I understand that, but you have to, the cuts has to be done because the government hasn't got the money to do it either way. So how can you say you're against cuts completely?
Well, this is very interesting because it's something that we are experiencing on the doorstep, and particularly the Labour politicians who say there is no money left, and yet we find out that the economy is now supposedly out of recession, that we've been told there's an increase in billionaires yesterday. There's been a substantial increase in the amount of billionaires in London. We're told that 180 billion is sitting in the vaults of the banks, accumulating money, and the 1%, the elite, the bankers, are speculating on that money, and they're making more money. And meanwhile, people like myself lose our jobs. People like some of the viewers' children will have to pay fees to go to university. Some of your viewers might have to queue up at hospitals to try and get access to healthcare. There's a report today saying that people have to queue up for over a week to see a doctor. Now these are all a consequence of unnecessary cuts, and we just reject the lie that there's no money left. We believe there's lots of money, particularly in the City of London. There is lots of money, but it's being hoarded by what has become known as the 1%, by the elite, and that's basically why we're standing to try and break the ideological logjam which says that cuts are necessary.
Okay, but even if you say cuts are necessary, the cuts are currently carried out by this government, and people are kind of leaning towards Labour because they believe Labour is going to be different and that they're not going to carry out through the cuts. But what's your point of view on that?
Well, if you remember, the crisis, the banking crisis, actually occurred under a Labour government, and the instincts of the government of the time was to bail out the banks. Now, we said we should have set up a people's bank, and we should have used our money, our state money, to bail out the little guy, if you like. If you were going to lose your home, we'll bail you out. If I was in danger of losing my job in the library, we'll bail the library out. But we're not going to bail out these group of parasites, and they are parasites, they're casino gamblers who took our money. And so we think that the Labour Party have been tested already. People have experienced them. They gave our money to the bankers in government, and now they're in opposition. Ed Balls has said that austerity and cuts will continue well into the next Labour government. All the Labour councillors in Waltham Forest have made cuts. I lost my job in phase 12. We're now up to phase 42, and there's no end in sight. So once again, we would say in the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, you cannot trust Labour. Labour really are a pale imitation of the Tories, because in practice, whilst in government and in local government, they've actually, done the bankers' bidding and they've cascaded their cuts.
Okay, so if you came to power though, how would you do things differently? I mean, okay, especially in terms of Tamil people, what kind of policies and facilities what would you do if you got elected, is the question.
Well, I think that, I've suffered because I've lost my job under the cuts, but I think that the immigrant community, the various immigrant communities who perhaps need council services more, have suffered acutely with these cuts. So if we were to get councillors, in rejecting the cuts and leading a campaign to get more money, we would obviously be able to provide, for instance, the translation services have been cut, English as a second or other language. They've taken an absolute scythe to the local college. One of the local lecturers who works at the college, who works on these courses, is standing on our platform, and we would reinstate all these language courses, learning English as a second or other language, the translation services, we would reinstate those, and we would provide and invest in community facilities like community centres and funding to do outreach work, etc. Because these are a benchmark of a civilised society, of bringing the various communities together. At the moment, it's these services that are in the front line and that are going.
I mean, tell us a bit more about TUSC. Is it true that Bob Crow, who is RMT Union, actually opened up TUSC, or is it?
Yes, yeah, it was. Bob Crow was a pioneer of the idea of a left of Labour platform, an electoral left of Labour platform. He'd basically given up on the Labour Party through his experience of watching them with the Iraq War and watching them privatise all the tube services when they were in power. He'd basically recognised that it was time to have a working class, pro-union, pro-workers' unity formation, and he put money into it. He got his union to back putting money into it, and also encouraging his members to stand. And we think this is the way to go. We would like the big unions, the monster unions like Unite and Unison, to stop giving millions of pounds of their money to the Labour Party, which has taken us to war. In case of the Tamil situation, Labour were in power. They did nothing over the genocide. The ordinary Tamil workers and local activists had to protest, in their thousands, in their hundreds of thousands, before they got a little bit of airtime to publicise what was happening inside Sri Lanka. And Bob Crow recognised this. He recognised that Labour could not be relied upon. I think, that was the Tamil community's experience during the genocide, but it was also ordinary workers' experience who perhaps don't come from the different immigrant communities, who recognised that they could not rely on the Labour Party in power, and so therefore we needed to construct a left platform. And that's what we're all about. We've we've stood in the local elections, we've stood in the GLA elections, and now we've got a big challenge of 560 candidates who we're standing in May 2014 on the 22nd.
560 candidates, that is a big number. But I'm just curious though, because most of the political parties, before they come to power, this is exactly what they say, that we're going to do this, we're going to do that. How is TUSC different? How is TUSC able to actually carry out through what it says? And even if you get elected, you'll be faced with so much pressure. Can you handle it? As a small party, would you be able to stand up?
Well, I think, the Tamil community knows what it's like to be a minority, but be right and be determined to fight for what they believe is right. And similarly, in TUSC, we believe that we need to build this platform, But we also stand on this idea of a workers' representative on workers' wages. So we don't believe that the trade union leaders or the leaders of the Labour Party should be on £100,000, £200,000 a year.
Yeah.
We believe they should take the wages of ordinary workers and give the rest of their money back to the movement. Now, of course, you know, if I can't say, you know, I can't exactly say how it will pan out, but all I can say is that the workers that are standing on this platform are the ones that do the petitioning in the workplace. I believe that in this platform that we've got, the 33 candidates we've got in Waltham Forest and the 560 we've got nationally, these people already are self-sacrificing. These people already face difficulties. These people already are not career politicians. They're not in it for the money. They've got a track record of campaigning at grassroots level. And I do think that in them we have the calibre of people who working class people from whatever background, Tamil, Pakistani, West Indian, they're looking for genuine, you know, conviction politicians, and I think that we've got those people.
I mean, from what you said, I did like the point about that those representing the workers and those representing the people should actually be getting the people's wages. And if TUSC candidates are actually, if they get elected and they would do that, that itself is a major breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because most of the people would be leaning towards Labour because they are the Workers' Party. I mean, they have established as Workers' Party. So why can't you just back Labour?
Well, I don't believe that that is the case, and I think that actually, even in, you know, substantial proportions, the immigrant community, whether Tamil or Pakistani or West Indian or whatever, Eastern European, there's somewhere in the back of their mind that they see this Labour Party not as the same Labour Party of 30 years ago, perhaps. And I think one of the big examples of this was during the invasion of Iraq, where, you know, the Labour government lined up with the imperialist powers and went to war. And as a consequence of that, millions of people, and particularly in you know, the Pakistani community, the Tamil community, rejected Labour and voted Liberal. So that's how comes we've got the Liberals in coalition, because a whole section of people was so outraged at Labour in power that they voted Liberal. But we argued in TUSC that the Liberals will betray us, and the Liberals have betrayed the youth, particularly from the immigrant communities who want to go to university. A lot of people who come to this country, they work really hard, perhaps 2 jobs, and then they have this expectation that their children will be able to have access to education and will do better than them. And now they find, as a consequence of the Liberal vote, that their children are going to walk out of university with £40,000–50,000 worth of debt. So we would say that you've got to really be honest about Labour's history and also about what Labour are standing on at the moment. If you look at what they're actually saying, they're not talking about, you know, taking back utilities, using the money to put into education. They're not talking about nationalising the rail companies and putting that into health. They're talking about continuing with the cuts. So I would say that we've got to be honest. We've got to be honest with ourselves. What is our experience? What is our recent experience and what is our experience now? The Labour Party has betrayed the working class, and that is all of the working class. Tamil community has been betrayed by the Labour Party in power. Their own experience of having to camp out in Trafalgar Square just so that they could get recognition for the genocide is an example of that. So how could you say to an ordinary Tamil youth in Trafalgar Square, join the Labour Party? They'd laugh at you. They'd say, I'm not going to join the Labour Party. The same with the youth in general. This is not our party anymore. And even though it's a difficult task, we have to build a new left socialist formation.
I think recently though the most surprising party that actually is popping up a lot on media would be UKIP.
Yes.
And as a minority, I mean, what's your point of view that a minority community actually does support this UKIP, and they kind of believe that UKIP would be more representative as well?
Yeah, that's a strange one, isn't it?
It is very strange.
But I think that in this crisis, in this economic crisis, where there has not been any strong lead by the trade unions to unify people against austerity, then the fallback position of people in their despair and disillusionment is to blame each other. And, you know, people like to blame the most recently arrived, don't they? Oh, I've been here for 30 years, these people have only been here for 10 years, and there's a pecking order. And the ruling classes and their mouthpieces in UKIP use this to play off different communities against each other. And we would say that the trade union leaders and the Labour Party have created fertile ground for UKIP in allowing austerity to continue and not leading a united campaign. You know, we meet people, I meet people, and I'm absolutely shocked when they say, oh, I'm voting UKIP. My African neighbour last week was saying, you know, I'm African, but, you know, I think they've got these policies. And it's an expression of the confusion at the moment, and it makes it more essential for TUSC to stand on an anti-austerity platform and to boldly walk forward. You know, we've got two Tamil socialists standing with us on our platform locally. We've got West Indian workers standing with us on our platform. I think that there will be a big vote for UKIP, and I think it will inspire people afterwards to get involved in the campaign to stop the growth of UKIP. I think it's an expression of the confusion at the moment, but nevertheless they have to be taken on.
You're right about expressing the confusion, because the UKIP itself is changing its policies day to day, and it's quite surprising to hear that minorities communities are actually supporting UKIP and thinking UKIP as an alternative, which is again expressing the confusion. Just a final question, Nancy. What would you say to the Tamil community living in Waltham? So why should they vote for TUSC? Why should they vote for you? What kind of facilities would you give to them?
Well, there's £40 million worth of cuts that the Labour Council have voted through, but they haven't released the details of those cuts. We're not going to know until June. Every Tamil worker that votes for TUSC votes to reject those cuts, votes for to reject those cuts that are coming down on the local community, and the Tamil community is a part of the wider community, so they're not going to escape these cuts. Those £40 million worth of cuts, combined with another 60, that's £100 million. So every Tamil worker who votes for TUSC is rejecting those cuts, and that would be of enormous benefit to our voice in terms of the anti-cuts movement. And if we get a good vote, then we intend to mobilise the Tamil community, the Pakistani community, all the communities to fight for better services. And when we had socialists in power in Liverpool in the 1980s, we built council houses, we built leisure centres, community centres, we introduced apprenticeships for young people, we would endeavour to restore EMA, we would launch a campaign around the assault on education, and the Tamil community has everything to gain from those sort of generalised campaigns, because you can work 2 jobs and you can work 70 hours a week, but if politics makes life harder and harder and harder for your family to just survive, then the answer is to become more political, and that's what we stand for. I'm not, you know, we're not saying we can do, you know, we can't wave a magic wand and make things, you know, brilliant overnight. What we're saying is come and get involved in our campaign, because what is happening to you is happening to the wider community. All these things can be fought for: language courses, community centres, you know, improvements to access to education, housing, policies on housing. A lot of the, you know, a lot of the Tamil community maybe came to this country, worked really hard to get a house. What the Pakistani community is saying to us now is our children can't live near us because housing is so expensive. So these things are showing themselves to the next generation, and particularly the young people have everything to gain through being involved.
Thank you, Nazita.
You're
Thank you
welcome.